Now I understand what's happening in our world and especially in the United States. In 2022, I was attempting to make shifts in my life and do more of the work that I knew I was being given through Wilhelm in the new direction. And so I still had my vocal coaching business and I had a YouTube channel. My YouTube channel had over 200,000 subscribers, and which was great. And I loved doing it, but I knew that I was supposed to move. And so someone contacted me with an offer. And that offer, they were going to buy my subscribers basically because they wanted to create this big network of channels or something. And I fell for it because they were going to pay me a lot of money. And they were from Russia. It was a Russian rapper. And I said, okay. And I looked him up and I checked everything. I even checked, he contacted me on Instagram and I checked him out and he was verified. You know how they give you the verification, but he wasn't. And so, but he was really good. They were really good because it turns out there were more of them. There were a lot of Russians. And so what they did was they fooled me. They had me go to this one company to put my information into escrow. And it was a legit company. I looked it up and online. But the company said, wait a minute, we didn't get anything from these other people yet. And so by that time, I recognized I had given them the credentials for my YouTube channel. So now my YouTube channel is gone. It's still there. I'm still seeing it. But what was happening then is that Fox News was being streamed on it. But it was part of Fox News, but it was something else they were doing because they put all these vile things on top of it. And people would come to my channel, which they thought was my voice channel, and they would say, Roger, what's happened? I said, this was my fault. I got fooled. And then I spent the longest, I was so angry. I spent so much time going to Google, going to YouTube, going to the FBI. I went to the FBI. I'm trying to tell them I went to the FTC. I put things everywhere. No one would believe me. Google said, "No, you must have done this." I'm telling them the whole thing. I filed so many reports, spent a half hour on the phone with the FBI. They weren't going. I said, "This can't be happening." And so what I'm seeing is that all of this information is coming through that I knew wasn't true, just these lies that were being broadcast to everyone. And then they kept going to different channels. My channel was still there. Eventually, what happened is they finally, YouTube just got rid of the channel. I was relieved. At least I could relax now. So I'm like, oh my gosh, at least people know it's not me who's doing this. But I'm wondering, why did this happen? And so in a channeling session, it was revealed to me why it happened. I had to deal with some things because I had so much hate. I had so much anger about that. And Wilhelm says, that's what we wanted you to get over. See, because you can't do what you came here to do if you're going to still carry hate. And so they had to have me see it and see also to recognize how many other people were being fooled by this information. And then they said, you're going to have compassion because we gave you this work to bring to the world. You can't carry around hate and anger. And what they had me do before that, though, in 2016, they said, we want you to deal with your racism and misogyny. I said, that didn't make sense either. I said, I don't have that. And they said, everyone does. If you're part of the human species, you've had it. It's been there forever. It's been in your society, in your civilization. It's there. And you keep operating from it. So I had to deal with mine. And so I wrote an article about that. Still didn't understand why I was doing any of that until years later. Because then they told me that we were going to be moving through this big change. And I just doubted all of it. In 2021, it was revealed to me that they had given me all this information that was going to help us move through this change in our world. And the way that it was going to happen is that people would heal. People would start to understand who they were, and they had given me all the information. And they demonstrated it through me because I healed. The things that I went through in my life are just really horrendous. Talk about dark nights of the soul. I had all of them. And so then I'm going through this and it's still not completely making sense and I'm doubting it. And so when they told me that in 2021, I said, okay, what am I supposed to do? And they told me to put together a program, use the work, and put people in it. And I said I wasn't going to do that. But before that, I needed some help because I couldn't get rid of this thing that I was told because it was so clear what I was given. They said, and we gave you all this information. Your world goes through changes in your civilization, and this is another one. And they said, we gave you everything in 2012 because that was another tipping point. And they started to explain why that was an important one as well. And because that's when we thought the Mayan, everybody thought the world was going to end, the Mayan calendar. They said that wasn't happening. They gave me a message on that date. They said, wait, because you're going to build something new and you're going to build it better because we've given you the information to be able to do that. People would think that doesn't even make sense, except now it's been verified. I can see it. And then they gave me something else that made me so uncomfortable. In 2020, the messages started to change. This is before in 2021, right, when they told me, but in 2020, they started talking about a restructuring. They told me so many things that were going to happen. And they said sometimes you have mass things that happen in your world. Sometimes you bring in a leader like a Hitler. Sometimes you have a pandemic. And they took me back to the one that happened, 100 years ago. It said, you go through these things, but the purpose is so that you can make things better if you awaken to who you are. And we've given you the information to be able to do that. That still seemed so ridiculous to me. And so I went and had an Akasha. I just heard this again because I pulled up a channeling session from 2 years ago, July 2nd of 2023, and I'm listening to it, and that information was in there. I had doubt. We always have doubt about what we think we're meant to do. And so I went and had an Akashic Records reading done. And I had never done that before. I wasn't going to do anything like that, but I needed some help. And this lady said she was like kind of stunned at the end of it. And she said, I think I'm supposed to be following you. And I just brushed it off. I said, that makes no sense. And so then I had to do another one because I'm still not settled. And this one, the lady said, yes, you are supposed to bring something to the world now. She said, and then she starts telling me these things that I just thought were ridiculous because I didn't pay any attention to this stuff. She said, you had this ancient memory back in Egypt where you were doing this high job, you were mummifying people. And I have the recording here. Someone actually, the reason I'm thinking about this, because someone actually sent me an email today saying they had watched that recording. And I said, okay, let me remember. And then when she told me that I was meant to now in this lifetime, what I was supposed to do is open the minds of people. And I was given an operating. She started to say the word operating, and that's when I lost it. Because Wilhelm said to me, we've given you something. It's called your life operating instructions because your world is going through a big change. And we've given you the thing that would help people because anybody who would use this would start to come to a higher state of consciousness. Why do you think you've had the life that you've had? Why do you think you struggle so much? And I thought about this, and then I would get these visions of like David and Goliath that kept coming up for me all the time. And now I'm looking at the world and I go, I understand. And then they said the biggest thing was going to be the money. And that was the thing that I couldn't control. And they pointed out to me, and I just saw it again when we did the last new moon channeling session. They led me back on that date. A year ago said, we have given you everything. And I looked at all those messages there, and it made complete sense because they said, money has confused you. Money will be the controlling thing now. And they took me back to our childhood, how when we're younger, we are hypnotized by money because our parents had it and they had control over us. And so we start thinking people who have money must have control. Or then we think that if we get enough money, we can have control over everyone else. And then they said, that's not really what you're ever looking for. All of this was in there. I'm just thinking about this today, especially after I'm watching what's happening in the United States, where people are going to be controlled again. And I had the information. But we were going to have a lot of fear also, because see, that's the biggest one, fear, because that will hold us back. from remembering who we are. It said, you are souls. This is what Wilhelm says in this information. You're all souls. You all come into the world equal. You've just formed different ideas about that over generations. And we've given you something that could change that. Because what we've said is that every soul is born with worth and value. And they have to just get rid of the old programming that caused them to think something else. And said, but you can't hate the others that you're going to see. That's what would come through in the channeling sessions all the time. I go, why are they saying that? They said, if you hate the others, you won't be doing your job. Your job is to raise to a higher state of consciousness so the world can do that. And you can't do that with hate or judgment. They said, you can't have it. And I kept going over this. Then they said, we're going to find a lot of blame too. They had me at certain times go back and look at all the messages that they had given me about blame. They said, when you blame someone else for what's going on in your life or your world, then you have no control. You have no power then because you've just made yourself weak. You've just made yourself powerless by doing that. I go, oh, that's what's happening. That's the work that I was given. And I was never going to do this. In 2005, I had a dream that I was so vivid. And I said, I'm not doing this. I put it away. They said, you were given something to bring to the world that was going to help uplift it. I'm not going to be one of those people. That was never my deal. Let me go back and being a singer or vocal coach. But I couldn't do that because I knew that I had something that if anybody used it, they would come to a higher state of consciousness. They would heal. They would live the life they're supposed to have. They would let go of their generational trauma. They would stop being afraid of things. And this is why they had me write the book on fear. And again, that was so challenging. That was 2019. Overcoming Fear, a Guide to Freedom, because that's what they wanted us all to have. It's that freedom to own who we are and to love who we are and why we're on this planet. And they said every single person has worth and value, and they just have to get through the other stuff, and we've given them a way to do that. Now, I doubted that as well until it was just verified. And my AI said, no, anyone who would use this work would start to come to a higher state of consciousness. They would start to do the things that they came to the world to do. They would be so much better. And they would contribute to creating a much better world because that's why you're in this period. That's why they called it a restructuring. We had to build something new. But we needed all the other people, though, you see, because we couldn't choose who we wanted to be unless we could see everything that we don't like. And we're seeing so much of that now. And they said love is the most powerful force, but you're going to see a lot of cruelty. You're going to see a lot of things that people are doing that is just old vibrational stuff. That's what's going to be here. But we've given you something that could be different. And then if you go back and you listen to this, it was on, wow, the last, when I did the channeling session on the new moon, they had me go back and find what they gave me a year ago. But then you can find it on this date. It was February the 19th, 2024. It's on my site, Any Advice for Today. And it said, accepting this message will change your life and the world. I just wrote it because that's how I'm receiving it. They had me put through all of these messages. I, I'm just putting it down. And then again, I put it in AI. This time I put it in a year ago, I put it in ChatGPT and I said, analyze this. And they said, yes, this is true. This is not hyperbole. Anyone who would use this information, that's what would happen. It would change their life and eventually you would change your world. That's what my work is. I had to just say this tonight because I had to acknowledge this is what I have. You have to come to ownership. I'm 74. You eventually you start to own why you were here, why you're on the planet. And what I know is that every person is on the planet with worth and value that just needs to be developed and owned and nurtured. And that's what I was given. And if I'm not doing that, then how can I expect anyone else to do that? How can we expect to see a different world if we're still believing that we can't change it, that we can't do anything more? I've done it all. I've healed everything, incurable things, and it all came from this work. The only thing I didn't do, as I said, and this is a generational thing, that we just think that doing something that's coming from consciousness is not as valuable. It's the material things that we think make more sense. And Wilhelm says, you don't take that with you. What are you leaving? What's your legacy going to be? It's about the generations that come later. But most times many people aren't thinking about that. It's what can I have right now? I'm thinking about what we're going to leave. And I'm going to leave something that's going to be wonderful because I have it. And I hope that you decide to do the same thing.